Yo, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Mostly Low Budget Movie Reviews. I am your host, Clarence. Thank you again for tuning in. And before we get started today, I just want to say thank you to those of you that have taken a few minutes to check out this content on here and on the podcast. I do appreciate that. I have seen a little bit more activity. So thank you very much. Keep that going. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Do all that good stuff, turn on your notifications. Definitely would appreciate that. With that out of the way, I kind of teased last episode which movie I was thinking about seeing. I wasn't quite sure yet, so I decided to go with the bigger movie of the two that were coming out, and it's starring Chris Rock with Samuel L. Jackson, and it's called Spiral from the Book of Saw. Now, I've been looking forward to this one for a while since it was announced last year, but it did get delayed with all the, all this stuff that was going on. And yeah, I wanted to see this one right away because these movies are known for their twists and their turns, and I didn't want any of those spoilers to happen or me accidentally reading something. Another thing I was really curious as to how they would incorporate the whole Jigsaw thing into a whole new story. And honestly, I wanted to see how Chris Rock would do with horror material. Now, he's been in serious stuff before, and he's done a pretty good job, but I wanted to see if he had those horror chops and see what kind of range he had. So, let's get into it. As I mentioned earlier, we got Chris Rock starring this one alongside Samuel L. Jackson, who they do have a few scenes together, not too many, but I'll get into that a little later on. And yeah, we start this movie out, we see this cop chasing this pickpocket down into this sewer, and this is where we get our first introduction to that first trap. Spoiler free, of course, won't talk about that. Then we cut to Chris Rock, his character's name is Zeke, and he's doing this monologue in a hotel room with some other guys. I'm definitely going to talk about this later on for sure. Spoiler free, I won't say any more about that setup. But now he's getting chewed out by his chief for being this rogue cop. Now, Zeke is a lone officer. He likes to work alone. He doesn't trust any of the officers. And that's for very, very good reasons. Spoiler free, can't talk about that at all. But what we do find out is that his father used to be the chief there, and now the chief is ordering him to work with a partner. And of course, his father being the former chief, he's got a lot of baggage and things that go along with that. So once he gets his partner, they're actually assigned to that subway killing who they believe is a homeless person. But as they start sorting through the things and looking around, they find out otherwise. He's not really a homeless person. So from there, yeah, that's where I'm pretty much going to stop because you guys know how it's going to go from there. We have to follow the investigation, see where it leads us, try to figure out who is doing the killings, of course, but also why are these killings happening and why are they targeting the people that they're targeting? And of course, obviously they got to figure out some traps and what's going on there. So is this a personal thing? Is this just simply a copycat thing? We don't know. So they're going to go through all the twists and turns and ups and downs that the investigation takes us through. And what did the pros think? Well, they came in at a 41% with 128 reviews so far. And the audience came in at 73% with over 100 verified ratings. And what did I think? First, let's get to the positives. Now, Rock does a really good job in this one. He has a few monologues that he goes through. And side note, shout out to my work buddy, Elsa. Now, we literally have this conversation and we joke around about this all the time. He does this little monologue about the Forrest Gump movie. And I literally say the same things to her. Let's face it, Jenny was a whore. And she was a disease-ridden whore. And Gump deserves so much better. But anyway, back on topic. Rock really stands out when he's doing these like casual scenes where he's just talking. like kind of just telling his point of view, which shouldn't be a surprise. Being a stand-up comedian, he kind of used to delivering lines that way, which is pretty cool because the serious tone of the material, he's still able to pull some laughs out of that without it being all silly like you would think it was, and that's not really that easy to do. So I was pretty impressed with the way he was able to pull that part of it off. Now, the story actually was quite a bit better than I expected. I was expecting them to kind of shoehorn the whole jigsaw thing and all that into the story, but they didn't do that here. They kind of weaved it in seamlessly with the overall central theme of the movie. And this is not a positive or a negative, but let's just say that the central theme of why things are going on and what's happening might be a little triggering for some people. Let's just say it has to do with the police and let's say the current state of affairs. I'm not gonna dive too deep into that. So if you feel strongly one way or the other about that, then this could possibly trigger you positively or negatively. For me, it was fine. It didn't really bother me at all. It just was, what they decided to put the story around. And yeah, that wasn't really that big a deal for me, but I'm just throwing it out there just in case you guys decide to go ahead and check this one out, that you might get triggered depending on how you feel about that particular topic. I also like the fact that they did some throwback stuff and little Easter egg things that if you're familiar with the series, there's certain camera shots and angles and things that they do that you'll be very familiar with, and it kind of brings you back and brings back fond memories of that series for some of the positive things. So that was really cool. But let's get to the star of the movie, and it's actually the traps. Of course, that's why one of the central reasons why you watch these movies, to see what kind of traps they have. And they have about 4 or 5 traps, I think, if I remember correctly. And, they have some pretty gruesome outcomes, but that's kind of where my negatives start. The traps were pretty basic overall, and I figured, coming to 2021, and they had all this time, because some of the later movies in the Saw series, movies weren't very good, but they had some really cool, like complicated, intricate traps, original ways to dismember and torture people, which, was pretty cool. The only reason why those movies continue to be successful was to see, how the traps worked out. But these traps were really simple. Like I said, they had some, gruesome results, but they really weren't all that complicated. They were pretty basic. And another thing was the gore factor. I really thought 2021 it would have cranked it up a notch. Some of the ones in the other series were more gruesome, more violent than this one. And I mean, I'm sorry, Mom, but I wanted more blood. I wanted more limbs and more, just more visceral stuff going on. And there's like one scene that was really cool that involved this finger trap. That was the only time I really was like, ugh. But other than that, like I said, it really didn't do enough to crank up that gore factor, which they really needed for this one. Now, I did mention how good Chris Rock was in this, but it wasn't a flawless performance. Again, with the horror stuff, there's certain things you have to be able to do. His screaming and, wincing in pain and things of that nature. He just didn't really get all the way there with that. But I'm nitpicking. So, it didn't, detract from his overall performance. He was pretty good. But it was just a little thing that stood out to me like I said, as a nitpick. Now, the Saw series is known for its misdirection, its twists and turns, not really knowing which way things are going. And for the most part, they do a pretty good job here, but there's a pretty big hole in the plot, and it kind of points you right in the direction of the person that it is, which, as you guys know, I complain about that all the time. Don't do the obvious. Well, of course, if you're new listening to me, you don't know that, but don't do the obvious. Point me somewhere and then point me a different direction. So in this case, I figured out who it was. I didn't know why, so I'm not going to say that. I didn't know why exactly, but I did know who it was. And again, that does bring it down a notch for me because I needed that Saw misdirection, because the original Saw, you had no idea that the guy laying in there was alive the whole time and all that stuff was going on, and they show the reveal. And that's pretty cool here. They do that too here. They show how everything happens in the reveal, which is really good. But again, because I knew ultimately who it was, it just didn't nail it for me. And like I mentioned before, does the story really hold up to scrutiny when you hold it up to the light and turn it around? Not really. But it doesn't, mess up the overall enjoyment. Again, I'm nitpicking here. And I don't want to beat this one up too much. Let me bottom line this one for you. Did I enjoy it? And I'm going to give this one, yes, a fresh score. I would put this one right at a 75% on Rotten Scale, so I definitely agree with the audience and disagree with the professionals. This is a nice entry into the universe of Saw, like I said, because it's not a reboot and it's not a direct sequel. This is another story in basically the same universe. And it does open a lot of new possibilities, because are they going to continue with the current theme? Or if it does well enough and they do another sequel, are they just going to open up another chapter in this book? So, yeah, that would be pretty cool, I think, if they kind of just abandoned what we just saw and kind of just gave us a new, fresh story where somebody who hadn't seen the other ones can just jump right in and watch this one. I think that would be kind of cool direction to take it. But that's just me talking out loud, Hollywood. If you're listening, I know you're not, but if you were, that's the way that I would go. Just give us a completely fresh new story and go forward from there. Now, again, it's not without its flaws. Again, the story really doesn't hold all the way up to scrutiny. The traps are too basic. They needed to be more intricate. They needed more gore and more violence. But overall, I mean, I really can't complain about what they gave me here. This is a pretty good movie. So if you're a fan of the Saw series, if you're a fan of the genre of horror, and like I said, you don't need to know a whole lot about any of the original movies to just kind of dive in and just watch this one, because this is a standalone situation. While they do reference things in the other movies, like I said, if you haven't seen those, if you're not a fan, that's just extra fan service for people like myself that enjoy the films and have seen the other ones. And so yeah, don't be alarmed by not seeing the other movies. You definitely can go ahead and watch this one. And with that being said, I'm going to close it out right here. If this is your first time, don't make it your last. Mostly low-budget movie reviews. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook. Of course, I do a companion podcast where I do movie reviews over there. So you're going to want to go ahead on Podbean, mostly low-budget movie reviews with Clarence, and subscribe over there, because I do reviews over there that you're not going to get here, and I'm going to do reviews here that you're not going to get over there, and different discussions and content. So the plan, again, I have an overall plan. We'll see if it all comes together. Hopefully it does. And I will be back again with another review soon, whether here or on the podcast, which, I'll report it either way on both platforms. And yeah, thanks again for spending a few minutes to check me out. I do appreciate it. And I will see you guys next time. Peace.